Nina sat opposite Clara at their favorite little cafe, her spoon lazily circling her coffee cup. A faint smile played on her lips, a remnant of the laughter Clara had sparked with one of her amusing tales. Yet, her gaze drifted elsewhere, distant and thoughtful. Picking up on her friend's subtle unease, Clara leaned in, narrowing her eyes slightly. "Okay, spill it. What's happening between you and Evan?" she asked, her voice both gentle and insistent. Nina let out a quiet sigh, placing her spoon down with care. "Everything's fine. Evan's a good man. A great husband, really. We've been married nearly 7 years now." Her fingers traced the rim of her mug as she hesitated. "But sometimes, I wonder if there's supposed to be more. More than just the same rhythm every day." Clara tilted her head, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "More? Huh. Exactly," Nina responded slowly, nodding. "It's like we're just coasting. Evan thinks life is perfect the way it is, but I keep thinking, shouldn't there be something more exciting?" Clara's interest deepened as she leaned in. "You know," she said, lowering her voice, "I've been trying something new myself." She glanced around before continuing. "Ever thought about opening things up a little? Giving yourself the chance to connect with other people?" Nina's eyes widened in disbelief. "Wait, you're serious?" "Absolutely," Clara said, her tone bright with enthusiasm. "My husband and I had a long talk about it. And honestly, it's been refreshing. Just the idea of having some freedom, of rediscovering ourselves. It's not about betraying anyone. It's about reconnecting, even with each other." Nina felt a strange blend of curiosity and apprehension stir within her. "But how do I even bring that up to Evan? He would never expect that from me. He'd probably think I've completely lost it." "Just be honest with him," Clara said gently. "Let him know how you're feeling. It's not a reflection on him. It's about what you need. He might surprise you. Sometimes, a little shift is all a relationship needs." Looking out the window, Nina inhaled deeply. It hadn't occurred to her that a single conversation could become a turning point. Yet here she was, standing on the edge of a decision that could alter her entire marriage. She turned back to Clara, her voice barely louder than a whisper amid the soft buzz of the cafe. "So how do I even begin that kind of talk?" "Just be straightforward," Clara replied, her tone calm but firm. "Men tend to appreciate directness more than we give them credit for. If you dance around it, he might just feel confused or suspicious." Nina frowned slightly. "But what if he thinks I've stopped loving him?" Clara reached out, patting her hand gently. "That's not it at all. You're not pushing him away. You're just sharing what's going on inside you. Be honest about your love for him, and explain that you're looking for a sense of freedom and self-discovery. If he understands that, he won't feel rejected. He'll see it as something you're doing for both of you." Taking another breath, Nina nodded slowly. "So, I just explained that I want to feel more alive, like I need to experience more than what we have now. Hopefully he won't take it the wrong way. He might not go for something so unconventional right away," she admitted. "But if he cares for you, he'll want to understand. That's the sign of someone who's willing to grow together, even in unexpected ways." The following evening, Nina sat across from Evan at their dining table, her nerves pulsing with each heartbeat as she silently rehearsed her words. She steadied herself with a breath and began, her tone gentle yet determined. "Evan, there's something I've been thinking about lately," she said, her eyes meeting his. He looked up from his plate, his attention fully on her. "What's on your mind?" "I've just been feeling unsettled. Not because of you or anything we've done wrong. It's more about something in me. I feel like there's more to explore in life, and I'm curious about what that could look like." Evan didn't interrupt. He listened, his expression calm but unreadable. "I guess I've been wondering," Nina continued, "what if we gave each other just a little more space? Not to pull away, but to see if exploring life from a new angle could be good for us. A little freedom might actually bring us closer." She watched him, hoping her words made sense, praying they wouldn't be misunderstood. After a pause, Evan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, his gaze steady. "So, you're thinking about opening things up?" Her heart raced, and she nodded. "Yes, but just to see what it's like. I believe it could be something healthy for us." He took a moment before responding, his voice quiet yet clear. "If that's what you feel you need, I'm not going to stop you." A wave of relief swept through her, but it came laced with a trace of unease. His composure caught her off guard. She had braced herself for a fight, or at least resistance. But instead, he had simply agreed, without raising his voice or showing a hint of anger. Evan settled back into his seat, arms folded across his chest as his eyes stayed on her. Evan's voice held a measured calm, though there was a subtle sharpness that Nina couldn't quite define. He asked, with deliberate care, if this newfound freedom she sought would go both ways. The question made her pause. It hadn't crossed her mind to consider what this might mean for him. She had assumed he would quietly support her choices. But now, watching him closely, a flicker of unease crept in. "Well, yes, if that's something you're looking for too," she responded, her voice unsure. Evan gave a thoughtful nod, his eyes fixed on hers. "I appreciate that, Nina. I think I get what you're asking for," he said, exhaling slowly before meeting her gaze again. "I'm okay with it. What matters most is that you're happy." Nina mustered a smile, trying to dispel the discomfort settling inside her. She had braced for conflict, or at least a moment of protest, but instead, Evan's composed acceptance left her feeling unexpectedly off balance. There was something about his demeanor that seemed too calm, too willing, and it made her feel like the ground beneath her was shifting. "Thank you, Evan," she said softly. "That means a lot to me." He returned a faint smile, but there was a glimmer in his eyes that left her stomach uneasy. She couldn't identify exactly why, but she sensed that the dynamics between them had changed in a way she hadn't intended or foreseen. A few days later, Nina and Clara walked into a lively downtown nightclub, lights flashing and music booming all around. The place buzzed with energy, laughter, chatter, and dancing filled every corner. The vibrant atmosphere stirred a mix of excitement and nerves in Nina. With a playful smile, Clara nudged her. "So, you finally made it. How does it feel?" she asked, raising her voice to be heard over the music. Nina chuckled, though her laughter carried a hint of nervousness. "I'm still trying to take it all in. I talked to Evan. He agreed to it. No fights, no accusations. Just calm." Clara raised an eyebrow in surprise. "That's impressive. I told you, honesty can go a long way. Sounds like he's open-minded." Nina nodded, though her expression remained uncertain. "Yeah, he was calm, almost too calm. He said he just wanted me to be happy. I expected more of a reaction, maybe even an argument, but instead, he was just accepting." Clara laughed, brushing off the concern. "He's probably excited himself. Trust me, he's likely thinking about his own freedom too. Men act all chill, but they don't miss opportunities. This could be good for both of you." Trying to set aside her doubts, Nina took a deep breath and smiled. "So, what about you? Does your husband know you're out with me tonight?" Clara's face briefly flickered with hesitation, but she quickly dismissed it with a carefree wave. "He's off hiking with his buddies. We've got an understanding. No questions, just mutual trust." Nina squinted slightly, curiosity creeping in. "So, he doesn't ask where you go or who you're with?" Laughing lightly, Clara took Nina by the hand, guiding her through the crowded space toward the bar. "Come on, Nina. Of course honesty matters, but that doesn't mean detailing every little thing. It's about freedom, remember?" Though a hint of doubt lingered, Nina was swayed by Clara's bold confidence. Before the thought could settle, Clara ordered drinks and raised her glass in a spirited toast to freedom and fresh adventures. Smiling, Nina tapped her glass against Clara's, taking a generous sip. The cocktails were sweet with a strong kick, and the tension in her chest began to melt away, replaced by a sense of ease and exhilaration. They headed to the dance floor, laughter spilling between them as the beat took over. Nina let herself go, the music making everything else fade. After a while, she felt a light tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with someone she hadn't expected, Lucas, a longtime colleague she had only ever known in a professional setting. But here, under the flashing lights, with a playful glint in his eye, he seemed completely different, charming, confident, even a bit intriguing. "I didn't think I'd see you here," he said, flashing a grin. Nina smiled back, a thrill racing through her. "I could say the same to you." Lucas soon introduced his friend to Clara, and the four of them fell into an easy rhythm, talking, laughing, and sharing another round of drinks. The night carried them into a carefree whirlwind, and Nina felt more alive than she had in years. As time passed, they gradually split into pairs, weaving their own paths through the crowd. Nina and Lucas found themselves in a quieter spot. The noise dimmed, their conversation turning softer, more intimate. He leaned in slightly, his tone gentle. "This side of you, it's new. I've never seen you like this before." Nina felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of surprise and delight. "I guess tonight brings out something different in me," she replied, her eyes locked on his. In that moment, everything felt strangely right, as if the evening had unfolded just the way it was supposed to. Without fully realizing it, they had left the pulsating club behind. Laughter echoed between them as they walked through the quiet streets, eventually arriving at a small, tucked-away motel on the edge of town. Neither one paused as they stepped inside. For Nina, The night unfolded like nothing she had ever known, electrifying and freeing, the exact kind of experience she had been craving. But when the morning light poured through the window, the rush began to ebb, leaving behind a complex swirl of contentment and a subtle unease. She quietly got dressed, casting a glance at Lucas, still asleep. The adventure she had long fantasized about was no longer a dream. Yet as she walked away from the motel, thoughts of Evan and his quiet, unreadable eyes clung to her mind. When Nina slipped through her front door that morning, the silence inside the house was immediate and unsettling. Her stomach fluttered with nerves. She searched the bedroom, checked the kitchen, and even peeked into the backyard, but Evan was nowhere in sight. Uneasy, she reached for her phone and called him. He answered after a few rings, his voice calm and clipped. "Hey, Nina, what's going on?" "Evan, where are you?" she asked, her nerves settling slightly just hearing his voice. "I'm at the office," he responded. "There's a new project that's demanding all my time. I'll probably be tied up with it for the next few weeks. Might even have to work through the weekend." Relief washed over Nina, though it was tinged with guilt. "Okay. I just didn't see you this morning, and I was wondering." "Everything's fine," Evan said, reassuring her. "Just busy. I'll be home in time for dinner." She let out a breath, her heart beginning to calm. "All right, take care. Talk later." That evening, the sun cast a soft orange hue through the windows as it sank behind the trees. Nina heard the sound of Evan's footsteps just before he stepped into the house. She smiled as he entered, setting his briefcase beside the door. "Rough day?" she asked, returning his tired smile with one of her own. He gave a small nod. "Yeah, you could say that." He headed to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. Nina followed him with her eyes, uncertain how to approach the conversation that weighed on her. She decided to tread lightly. "So, how are you feeling about everything?" she asked, her tone casual. Evan looked at her over the rim of his glass, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Everything?" With a sheepish smile, she clarified. "You know, the whole open marriage thing. Have you been seeing anyone? Or feeling like it's working for you?" He put down the glass and leaned against the counter. "Honestly, I haven't even had time to think about it," he said in a steady voice. "This project is taking up every minute. Maybe once things calm down, I'll be able to give it more thought." Nina tried to hide her disappointment, forcing a smile instead. "That makes sense, I guess." Evan gave a slight shrug before changing the topic. "But what about you?" he asked, eyes fixed on her. "Didn't you and Clara go out the other night?" Her heart skipped. She briefly considered revealing what happened with Lucas, but quickly chose to keep the details vague. "Yeah, we had some drinks, danced a little, and crashed at her place. Nothing wild," she said, hoping she sounded casual enough. Evan observed her, his expression unreadable. "And how did that feel? Is this really what you were hoping for?" She hesitated, but the answer came out without much thought. "Actually, yeah, it felt good. I know it's early, but I feel recharged. Like I found a kind of energy I didn't realize I was missing." His eyes flickered briefly with an emotion she couldn't name, but his voice remained soft. "I'm happy for you, Nina." "Really?" she asked, watching him with a mixture of surprise and relief. She smiled, but something about his calm demeanor left her feeling unsettled. She had braced herself for a stronger response, perhaps even a bit of resistance, but he appeared entirely unfazed. In the days that followed, Nina found herself constantly texting both Lucas and Clara. Lucas was charming, full of playful flirtation, and openly enthusiastic about the night they had shared. He teased her with promises of something unforgettable planned for the weekend, a grown-up gathering he claimed would be unlike anything she'd seen before. Curious, Nina agreed, but felt it would be wise to run it by Clara first. She picked up her phone and dialed Clara, her emotions a blend of anticipation and apprehension. "Hey Nina, all set for tomorrow?" Clara's voice was bright as she answered. Nina chuckled, but there was hesitation in her tone. "Kind of. I actually wanted to ask you about something. Lucas keeps talking up this party, and the way he describes it, it sounds a little different." "Oh, it'll definitely be different," Clara replied with a laugh. "Lucas knows how to throw a party. It's going to be amazing." Nina paused before adding, "It's just Evan's been acting distant lately. He's buried in work, and I can't figure out if he's genuinely okay with all of this or just too distracted to care." Clara laughed again. "Nina, trust me. Evan's probably using work as a cover. Guys hate admitting when they've got their own thing going on. It's just how they are." A flicker of jealousy rose in Nina, but she forced herself to let it go. "Maybe you're right." Nina let out a sigh, her voice tinged with longing. "I just wish he'd show some kind of emotion." Clara, speaking with the confidence of someone who had seen it all, gave her a knowing smile. You need to loosen up. Forget about Evan and his endless workload tonight. Let yourself enjoy the moment. Lucas's party is exactly what you need to clear your mind. Intrigued by the promise of a good time, Nina raised an eyebrow. All right, I'll give it a shot. But Clara, when you say fun, what kind of fun are we talking about here? A mischievous chuckle escaped Clara's lips. Let's just say you might pick up some unusual expressions, like Milk Brothers or maybe the Captain's Wheel. Nina blinked, half laughing, half confused. The Captain's Wheel? What in the world is that? Clara's laughter rang out again. Oh, you'll find out soon enough. Just be ready for a night you won't forget. As she ended the call, Nina felt a buzz of anticipation start to replace her earlier anxiety. This might just be the shakeup she needed. By the time Saturday rolled around, Nina casually told Evan that she'd be spending the evening with Clara. She kept her tone light, framing the outing as a standard girls' night. Evan didn't even look up from the stack of papers in front of him. Have a good time, he muttered, eyes still fixed on his work. Don't worry about me. I'll be buried in this project all night. Nina felt a strange mix of satisfaction and freedom. Okay, but don't overdo it, she said, heading out the door. Evan gave a vague nod, still absorbed in his work. Have fun, he said in a calm voice. A thrill coursed through Nina as she left. Something about his nonchalant attitude made it all feel easier, like the stars had aligned for her to dive into something exciting and new. Later that evening, Nina and Clara arrived at Lucas's place. The house stood out immediately stylish and inviting, with gentle music floating through the air. Lights spilled from the backyard, illuminating the shimmering pool and giving the whole scene an almost cinematic glow. Nina hadn't anticipated such a vibrant atmosphere, but the place was already alive with energy. About a dozen people mingled in small groups, some men she didn't recognize and a few unfamiliar women. Lucas spotted them and lit up. Nina, glad you're here, he said warmly. He gave Clara a quick, friendly hug, then gestured for them to follow him toward the pool area. Just so you know, he said with a playful grin, the pool's open game tonight. Did you bring a swimsuit? Nina's eyes widened. No, I didn't even realize there'd be swimming. Lucas chuckled, his tone light. No worries. Underwear's fine. Or, hey, go without. No one's judging, he added with a wink. Nina felt her face grow warm, but Clara's enthusiasm didn't waver. She slipped off her shoes with a grin, turned to Nina, and offered a reassuring smile. Come on, it's going to be a blast. Without hesitation, she pulled off her dress, revealing her matching undergarments, and dove into the pool with a loud splash. Lucas handed Nina a drink, and slowly, she began to let her guard down. The whole scene had the carefree spirit of a college bash, people laughing freely, music thumping, and drinks being passed around generously. Everyone seemed completely at ease, including Clara, who was already floating happily in the pool. As the night progressed, Nina felt her nervousness dissolve into the buzz of energy around her. Light flirting mingled with dares that became increasingly bold. Some guests swapped dance partners, others dove into light-hearted games that pushed boundaries, including spontaneous challenges to remove clothing while splashing in the water. The rules she had expected to define the evening faded quickly. The entire vibe was uninhibited and magnetic. Nina found herself swept up in it, glancing now and then at Clara, who was clearly thriving in the atmosphere. At one point, Lucas leaned in close, his voice smooth and inviting as he slipped an arm around her waist. So, Nina, ready to explore something new tonight? His hand rested gently against her back, his gaze filled with playful promise. Nina felt her heart beat faster, the current of the evening tugging her toward the unknown. I think it might be, she whispered, curiosity sparking in her voice. As the crowd naturally paired and grouped off, Nina found herself surrounded by new faces, some sharing inside jokes, others engaging in open flirtation. The energy hinted at more intimate moments on the horizon. She caught Clara's eye across the pool. Her friend raised her glass in a toast, grinning as if to say, let the night unfold. But just as things began to shift in a more intimate direction, Nina's excitement wavered. As hands reached out and the atmosphere thickened with suggestion, her breath caught, not in thrill, but in hesitation. A wave of uncertainty surged in her chest. Taking a steady breath, she gathered herself and stepped slightly away from the group. Her voice calm but clear, she said, actually, I don't think I'm ready for this. Not yet. As she began pulling her clothes back on, the energy around her blurred, and all she wanted was to feel grounded again. A quiet wave of disappointment moved through the group. The most people responded with understanding. Lucas offered Nina a kind, encouraging smile. "It's all right, Nina," he said in a gentle tone. "Maybe another time. It just takes a bit to get comfortable." But Clara wasn't ready to let it go. She leaned in with a bright grin. "Come on, Nina. You're enjoying yourself. Just give it a little more time. You'll really have fun if you let yourself ease into it." Still, Nina gave a firm shake of her head, her discomfort now more visible. "I just don't think I can, Clara. I need a little longer to adjust." Lucas placed a calming hand on Clara's shoulder. "Let her go at her own pace," he said kindly, then gave her a playful grin. "Besides," he added with a wink, "I think you'll find more than enough company here willing to keep the night lively." Picking up on the change in tone, Clara laughed and moved on, slipping seamlessly back into the vibrant crowd. In no time, she was once again the center of attention, and the atmosphere grew even wilder. From the doorway, Nina stood back and watched as the rest dove deeper into the night's excitement. The energy of the party swelled, laughter blended with music, and the room pulsed with uninhibited rhythm. Feeling disconnected, Nina quietly stepped away into a more secluded space. She poured herself a glass of wine, sank into an armchair, and listened as the muted sounds of the gathering floated in from the other room. Her mind drifted to Evan. She remembered how calm and collected he had been when she mentioned she'd be spending the night with Clara. At the time, she'd seen it as a sign of trust, of his willingness to respect her choices. But now, sitting in silence, she wondered whether his stillness had hidden something else, something she hadn't fully grasped. Though a part of her longed to leave, she remained, sipping her drink, her thoughts becoming heavier with each moment. As hours passed, the party gradually lost momentum. People emerged from dimly lit corners, gathering again for snacks and soft conversations. Laughter returned, lighter now, as the night neared its end. Spotting Nina alone, Clara approached with a bright smile and flushed cheeks. "Hey," she said, nudging her gently. "You okay? You seemed a little distant for a while." Nina forced a small smile. "I'm fine. Just thinking maybe this isn't really my scene." Clara gave a small laugh and waved a hand. "You just need time to warm up. Trust me, next time, it'll feel completely natural." But as morning light crept in, a tight discomfort took hold of Nina's chest. People began to leave, exchanging quick goodbyes as if the night had been nothing more than a casual get-together. Quietly, Nina slipped away and drove home, her earlier curiosity now replaced with a deep, uneasy feeling. When she arrived, the house stood silent and dark. She exhaled in relief, assuming Evan was still asleep. Moving gently through the living room and up the stairs, she entered the bedroom only to freeze. The bed was perfectly made, untouched. Evan was gone. She glanced around quickly, a knot forming in her stomach. Some of his clothes were missing, and his side of the bed was completely bare. A wave of panic swept over her. Her eyes locked onto a stack of documents resting on the nightstand. In bold, black letters, the top page read, "Divorce." Her breath caught. With trembling hands, she picked them up, her mind spinning. This couldn't be real. But as the truth sank in, it all began to connect. Evan's quiet demeanor, his calm responses, the distance he had kept. It hadn't been passiveness, it had been planning. She tried calling him, again and again, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. Her heart pounded as she redialed, hoping for anything, a text, a message, even a single word, but there was nothing. In the days that followed, she reached out repeatedly, leaving voicemails and sending messages, begging him to speak with her. But he remained completely unreachable, vanishing from her life like smoke. The only word she got came through his attorney, formal, cold, and unyielding, leaving her isolated and confused. Things grew worse at work. The once friendly atmosphere among her colleagues shifted to one of quiet judgment. She soon discovered the reason. Evan had compiled proof of her relationship with Lucas. He'd gathered messages, pictures, and even details from the party. As whispers spread, it became clear that the workplace, with its strict values and rigid expectations, had no tolerance for scandal, especially one that blurred personal and professional lines. One afternoon, her manager summoned her for a private meeting. The look on their face was stern. They informed her that her recent behavior was under official review. The career she had poured herself into now hung by a thread. When her day in court arrived, the depth of Evan's strategy became devastatingly apparent. The evidence was extensive private texts, revealing photos, and detailed records from a private investigator. He had tracked her every move, documenting her evenings with Clara, the moments spent with Lucas, and even the night she stepped into Lucas's house for the gathering. Nina sat frozen, the silence around her a sharp contrast to the turmoil spinning in her head. A storm of betrayal, regret, and self-reproach churned within her. Her eyes moved slowly across the courtroom, but in her mind, she felt Evan's steady presence right behind her, so composed, so measured, highlighting just how impulsive and blind she had been. She had never anticipated this moment, never guessed he had been quietly watching all along. The truth hit her like a surge of icy water. Evan had always known. While she had been consumed by desire and selfish ambition, he had been discreetly collecting every piece of evidence, all while pretending to be immersed in work. The opposing attorney methodically laid out the damning evidence. "Ms. Johnson, we have here a series of messages between you and Mr. Porter, containing suggestive and inappropriate exchanges," he declared, handing the printed messages to the judge. "Additionally, we present photos taken by a private investigator that show you at Mr. Porter's home during a party. These images depict you both in a compromising position." Nina fought to hold back her tears. She couldn't believe this was her reality. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I never thought it would end up like this," while her heart raced with a mix of dread and disbelief. Her attorney leaned toward her, his tone calm but strained. "Nina, I know this doesn't look good, but we'll work through it. You need to stay composed." But that was impossible. Evan's cold precision in orchestrating this moment left her breathless, crushed under the weight of his quiet vengeance. She glanced at the prosecutor again. His gaze was firm, unemotional. There was no pity in his eyes, only judgment. Stepping outside the courtroom for a few minutes, Nina leaned against the wall, struggling to collect herself. Her phone vibrated. She checked the screen with shaking hands. A message from Evan appeared. Slowly, she opened it. The words were short but devastating. "I hope you understand now what you've done. I saw everything. This was your choice, Nina." Tears blurred her vision as she read his message. She hadn't expected this outcome. She wanted freedom, something different, something more. But she had never meant to destroy her world in the process. She had been so wrapped up in chasing what she thought she lacked that she'd missed what was unraveling right in front of her. Evan had simply waited. The following day, after the legal proceedings ended, Nina tried reaching out to Evan. Desperation clung to her as she dialed his number again and again, hoping for a chance to explain, to make things right. But each call was met by his voicemail. Her messages went unanswered. Finally, with a broken voice, she left one last plea. "Evan, please, if you can hear me, just talk to me. I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. Please, please say something." But her words echoed into silence, lost, like the guilt that had taken over her ever since the downfall began. The silent storm she had ignored had now demolished everything she held dear, leaving only wreckage behind. The divorce proceedings were relentless. Every aspect of Nina's personal life was exposed in painful detail. Her private exchanges with Lucas, which once felt innocent and playful, were now displayed as scandalous. Her late-night outings with Clara, her decisions, her moments of weakness, all of it was dissected and laid bare for public judgment. There was no refuge left, no shield to hide behind. The consequences were swift and brutal. Nina lost her job almost immediately. The company couldn't overlook the scandal that now surrounded her. Her once strong professional reputation was destroyed overnight. Lucas faced a similar fate. His dismissal came quickly, his career crumbling under the weight of their shared choices. Word of the affair and the courtroom drama spread rapidly through their conservative workplace, staining Nina's name and isolating her from the people she once trusted. Friends grew distant. Colleagues whispered behind closed doors. Judgment was everywhere she turned. She had become the embodiment of gossip and scandal. Both she and Lucas had become cautionary examples of what happens when personal boundaries blur in a community that thrives on privacy and tradition. But the harshest blow came from an unexpected direction. Clara's husband, Evan, ever composed and methodical, had sent every piece of evidence to Russell. Nina was stunned to discover that Clara's story had been a lie from the start. Russell had never agreed to any open arrangement. He had been completely unaware of his wife's secret affairs. The truth hit Nina like a punch to the gut. Clara had betrayed more than just friendship. She had played a dangerous game with people's lives. The moment Russell confronted Clara, everything collapsed. They stood in the middle of their living room, tension crackling like electricity in the air. Russell's hand shook slightly as he threw a folder filled with documents onto the table. "Clara, what is all this?" Russell's voice trembled with a blend of fury and disbelief. "How could you do this to me? To everything we had?" he demanded, his tone sharp and pained. Clara stood frozen in place, her face pale as the full weight of his accusations hit her. There was nothing she could say to counter the evidence staring them both in the face. It's not what you think," Russell, she faltered, her words shaky as she tried to regain some form of control. Not what I think? Russell echoed, his voice rising with every word. You've been deceiving me for months, and now this? You've been living a separate life while I was completely unaware. How long did you think you could keep this from me? His eyes were wide with emotion, every sentence cutting deeper than the last. Clara's usual poise gave way as her shoulders slumped and her facade crumbled. I didn't want you to find out, she whispered, barely able to raise her voice above a murmur. Well, now I have, Russell snapped, the finality in his tone impossible to miss. And I can't just let this go. You broke my trust, Clara. I'm filing for a divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara felt like the ground had vanished beneath her feet as Russell walked away, leaving her in a home that no longer felt like her own. What had once seemed stable and secure now unraveled in moments. The aftermath came fast and mercilessly. As Russell began the divorce proceedings, word of the scandal spread like wildfire through Clara's social networks. Friends who had once been supportive and loyal turned their backs on her. Whispers replaced conversations, and her once tight circle was now a sea of judging eyes and cold shoulders. Overwhelmed by the rejection and burning with rage, Clara cut all ties with Nina, whom she blamed for her downfall, and Evan, by extension. Her final message to Nina was laced with venom. You just had to destroy everything, didn't you? Clara's message seethed. I never asked for any of this. My life is in ruins now, and it's all because of you and Evan. When Nina read the message, her phone still in hand, she released a slow, heavy breath. No apology or expression of regret could turn back the damage done. And soon, Nina began to feel the same social isolation engulf her. Her own circle quickly followed suit, pulling away with an unsettling ease. Friends, neighbors, and even some family members distanced themselves. Every interaction felt altered. People hesitated when she entered a room, their eyes flicking away to avoiders, their smiles strained and short-lived. The warmth she once shared with so many had vanished. Even coworkers, with whom she'd built years of camaraderie, now greeted her with forced politeness or silent nods. Gone were the casual chats by the coffee machine or the invitations to lunch. In meetings, the atmosphere shifted noticeably when she walked in, thick with discomfort and judgment. Even those dearest to her seemed unable to bridge the widening gap. Her parents, always her steadfast supporters, now seemed distant. During a visit one afternoon, her mother greeted her not with affection, but with a rigid hug. We're worried about you, sweetheart, her mother said, the concern in her voice overshadowed by underlying disapproval, as if Nina had become a stranger. At work, isolation deepened. Her team no longer included her in lunch outings, and conversations that used to come so easily now felt awkward and hollow. Lily, one of her closest colleagues and friends, once so vibrant and friendly, had gone quiet. Their chats had dwindled into brief, strained exchanges, if they happened at all. Meanwhile, Evan emerged from the chaos with his reputation not only intact but elevated. He had carried himself with quiet dignity, never raising his voice, never seeking vengeance. His grace earned him widespread sympathy. In contrast, Nina's missteps were exposed, dissected, and judged. Her former allies now stood firmly in Evan's corner, their loyalty shifting with barely a second thought. It felt like the entire world had turned against her. Neighbors who once waved and smiled now crossed the street to avoid her. They busied themselves with anything, checking their mail, watering plants, talking on the phone, just to avoid making eye contact. With each passing day, Nina felt the gap between herself and the life she once knew growing deeper and more impossible to bridge. Eventually, she managed to reach Evan, hoping for one final, honest conversation. They sat across from one another, the silence thick. Nina felt the weight of everything crashing down, her chest heavy with emotion. She looked at him with teary eyes, her voice trembling with desperation. Evan, please. I made a terrible mistake. I thought it might become something meaningful, something that would bring us closer in an unexpected way. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I only had one night with Lucas, and at that party, I couldn't even go through with anything else. It was just one huge mistake. I'm so sorry. Please, can you forgive me? Evan released a slow, deep breath. His eyes met hers with a calmness that seemed final, filled not with anger, but something more distant, perhaps pity, or the quiet relief that came with closure. His expression softened, yet his gaze carried no affection, only fatigue. Nina, he said, his voice steady, his tone composed but void of tenderness. When a woman suggests an open marriage, it's usually because those thoughts have already taken root in her mind. Ideas had been planted like seeds long before the end of the marriage became visible, ideas that slowly poisoned the roots. Evan's words struck hard. You weren't honest with me. You tried to live with one foot in a different world and the other still here. Nina felt a tightness grip her throat as she listened, absorbing the truth that stung more than she had anticipated. She could feel the weight of it, because it was true. I never meant to hurt you, she murmured, barely louder than a breath. Evan's eyes stayed locked on hers, his expression unwavering, held in a calm, composed mask. That's the hardest part for me, he said after a beat. You could have told me. I gave you the space, but you kept things from me. I trusted you, Nina. And that trust, it's broken. Beyond repair. He paused, choosing his words with care. I wanted to believe you were still the same person I married. But you've changed. Maybe you don't realize it, but deep down, your decision was already made. Nina sat in stunned silence, each word digging deeper, anchoring the painful truth. His certainty left no room for her to argue, no path back to what they had been. This wasn't what I wanted, she whispered, but it was clear her words carried no meaning anymore. He looked at her one last time, and his gaze was nearly unreadable. This can't be fixed, Nina. Not anymore. Your actions made that choice for us. She bowed her head, a heavy sorrow settling over her as his voice, though steady, sliced through the moment like a final verdict. I just wanted it to end without bitterness, Evan continued, voice low and firm. Maybe I handled it harshly, and I'll own that. But the fact that you felt the need to keep those details from me, that said everything I needed to hear. His eyes grew distant. I really don't think this can be repaired, Nina. A silence followed, thick and pressing. Nina could hardly breathe under its weight. The reality of his words settled over her like a curtain dropping on a final act. Once, she had cried freely, but now the tears wouldn't come. It was as if even her emotions had abandoned her, recognizing the futility in feeling. She had convinced herself that the affair, this bold leap into the unknown, might actually pull them closer together, rekindle what had long gone dormant. But instead, it had done the opposite. What she believed was a journey toward personal freedom and self-understanding had revealed only the fractures she'd refused to acknowledge. In seeking fulfillment outside of her marriage, she had not found what she was missing. Instead, she had destroyed the very thing that once gave her stability. Her quest had not brought her peace, only regret. None of this was meant to happen, she whispered, barely finding her voice. Evan remained silent. He didn't need to say anything more. His stillness conveyed everything. Nina understood then. It wasn't only the marriage that lay in ruins, but also the trust between them and perhaps even the version of herself she thought she knew. The realization hit hard, anchoring itself in her chest with a finality that left no opening for hope. Her decisions had brought her to this place, alone, surrounded by the consequences of what she had done. That night, as Nina left Evan behind, she felt an unfamiliar emptiness take hold of her. The world around her felt muted and remote, like a blurry dream. Each step forward seemed heavier than the one before, like she was being pulled into a deep void by an unseen force. In the days that followed, she was consumed by a crushing despair. The apartment, once brimming with potential and newness, now seemed to suffocate her. Its silence echoed her internal shame. Though she once leaned on family, friends distanced themselves. She had expected coldness, but the complete absence of connection stunned her. No messages, no visits, no phone calls, just silence. She threw herself into work, tried to escape the noise in her head with constant distractions. But the emptiness remained, undisturbed by any attempt to drown it. Wine dulled her mind, but never filled the void. At night, she would lie in bed, wide awake, fixating on every lie she told, every choice that led her to this. Soon, that sadness took on a darker shade. She stopped eating. She no longer found reasons to leave the apartment. The vibrant woman who once sought a fresh start now felt like a stranger trapped in her own skin, a version of herself she could no longer identify with. Her health gradually declined as neglect took its toll, and emotionally, she became increasingly entangled in a web of sorrow. Then one day, while at her job, Nina collapsed. Her coworkers hurried to assist her, alarmed by her convulsing frame and frantic, irregular breathing. It was evident that her emotional burden had reached a breaking point. Medical professionals later identified the incident as a breakdown, a major depressive episode. Doctors quickly recommended psychiatric care, emphasizing that Nina could no longer endure this suffering alone. Although her family was still grappling with the consequences of her past actions and hesitated at first, they eventually agreed to her admission into a mental health facility. Inside the institution's cold, clinical environment, Nina sat in a stark room that seemed to mirror the void she felt inside. The harsh glow of fluorescent lights flickered above her, while footsteps echoing through sterile hallways could not drown out the oppressive silence in her head. She had once clung to the hope that time would mend her pain, that she could somehow reconcile with herself. But as the days dragged by, it became apparent that healing was not within her grasp. The harm she had inflicted and the relationships she had shattered could not be reversed. With no one left to offer her reassurance or comfort, she was left with nothing but the unchanging walls around her. The institution's staff, though compassionate, kept a professional distance. They encouraged her to express her emotions, but Nina remained wordless. The grief anchoring her soul felt too deep to articulate. Her days became a blur of stillness, her gaze fixed on the plain white walls, her mind a constant whirlwind of regret. She came to understand that she had absorbed a harsh truth, yet it gave her no relief. Redemption no longer seemed possible. Rather than bring her peace, time had only widened the divide between who she once was and the fragmented woman she had become. She felt imprisoned not only by the facility but also by her own thoughts. Each passing day made her former hope for inner peace feel increasingly unreachable. All that lingered were the remnants of her past, echoing through the lonely silence that now defined her life. Meanwhile, Evan had moved on. In the aftermath of their divorce, he took time to process the emotional fallout Nina had left behind. Eventually, he found solace and a fresh start. He met a woman who valued transparency and emotional steadiness, someone who offered the kind of uncomplicated love he had longed for. Their connection was effortless, and for someone like Evan, who cherished calm and dependability, it was exactly what he needed. Within 12 months, he married her. They settled in France, a country he had always admired for its quiet elegance. They chose a peaceful village just outside of Paris, far from the turbulence of his past. Here, the memories that once weighed him down slowly began to dissolve into the serenity of his new life. Days passed in gentle rhythms, filled with the stillness of countryside living, while evenings were brightened by shared stories and laughter with his wife. Though Evan never reached out to Nina again, he found a sense of finality in his decision to move forward. The past, painful and full of hard-learned lessons, no longer held him hostage. France offered him a fresh narrative, one in which he could breathe freely, unburdened by the betrayal that had once defined his life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.